Before we get to a smart contract, let's talk about a dumb contract. You know, a traditional contract that companies are negotiating. Let's say I have two companies here. I have company A and I have company B. Company B wants to purchase stuff from company A. Company A wants to sell stuff to company B. So this should be a good review of the processes we've already talked about in this class, right? The first step here, company B says, I'm going to send in a purchase order to the company. Company A is going to receive a sales order. This is the beginning of our sales contract, and there are actually multiple contracts that take place along this process. For example, when we are setting the terms of the purchase order, we're going to decide first whether we are going to offer credit to company B, whether they're going to record it as a credit sales with an accounts receivable, or whether we're going to reject it. We're going to set up the contract details that include the amount, the quantity, the items that are being sold. Not only that, but we are also going to set the terms of the contract, like how many days are we expecting until it ships? What are the terms of payment? Is it 210 net 30, et cetera, et cetera? And are there any discounts that are included in the contract? So all this stuff is going to be written down. Okay, maybe not on a piece of paper, but in a computer system that's exchanging this detail. All right, sales order comes in. Company A then goes to the warehouse. They're going to pick and pack and ship the goods to company B, who has a goods receipt. Okay, what details do we need for the shipment? I'm now involving a third party. Right, I have my bill of lading. Right, bill of lading is a contract with the carrier, UPS, FedEx, etc. We're going to set up insurance. We need an insurance contract to make sure that the goods arrive in the condition that we expect. Okay. We have to agree on the condition of the goods. There's going to be a packing slip that verifies the items that are going to be included on the pallet or in the box, etc. Okay, so the goods finally come. Once the goods come, company A sends an invoice. We're glad you like it, now pay us, please. Okay, the invoice has something like a due date on it. And we have terms. We're increasing our accounts receivable on company A's side and increasing our accounts payable on company B's side. So they get the invoice over here. Now this is where it gets a little tricky, because after you receive the invoice, depending on the type of company that you are, you're going to send payment. And a cash receipt. And this gets a little tricky, because if you're a large company, think about like an Alcoa or Procter & Gamble, you are engaging in something called supplier side financing. That means that you agreed to terms like 210 net 30. You're going to take a 2% discount if you pay within 10 days net 30. You guys remember these, right, from financial accounting? Okay, so you offer 210 net 30 to Procter & Gamble. That was a mistake, because Procter & Gamble is going to pay you in 120 days, and they're going to take the discount anyways because you offered it. But you as a supplier have really little recourse, because Procter & Gamble is a really important customer, and you know, yeah, they're kind of jerks that way, but what are we going to do? The reason companies do this, by the way, and this is pretty common practice if you go to large companies, is because the banks have said, hey, if you do it this way, then you don't have to take out money to cover your working capital, your cash flow in that period, and you can push that cost down to your suppliers. So the poor little supplier is going to say, oh, okay, well, you know, they're not paying me for 4 months, so I guess I'll have to take out a loan and I will pay the interest on that. At which point you say, okay, well, now the supplier can increase cost and pass it on to Procter & Gamble. And Procter & Gamble says, no, because we're Procter & Gamble, so you're going to still charge us what we charged before. Anyways, so there's a lot of squishiness in these contracts, right? Depending on who the person is or the player that has the upper hand is in negotiating those payment terms. So when the payment terms go out, we are going to decrease our accounts payable. We are going to decrease our accounts receivable. Okay, we're going to deal with some of these payment issues. So all of these things with, you know, yeah, we're going to take the discount. And we're going to have to deal with, altered terms because we can. And then the last thing that we have after all the payments gone out, you've got your product, we're glad you're happy with it. The contract's not completely done yet because we still have an additional performance obligation, right? We have this whole thing called service and support where we negotiate, okay, post-sale, how do we make sure that you're happy with it for the warranty period or for the negotiated time, or do we send people out to maintain and help with that? Service and support. There's a lot of stuff that's going on in just a simple purchase or sales contract. And like I said before, when we negotiate these things, I may promise something and not necessarily deliver on it because my company policy forbids me from doing that. But this is where we come up with this idea of a smart contract. So a smart contract takes people out of the equation after we've negotiated the original performance obligation, sales, revenue, and so forth. We decide on the terms, we agree on the terms, and then we are going to take the key pieces of data out of this, and we're going to tag it. We may say, the date here is 2019, 11/11, and we may have an amount that is, $100,000. And we're going to tag it using something called extensible markup language, XML. Basically, it's just we're tagging the data so a computer can read it and work with it directly. Okay. And the key thing here is that once the performance has been completed, once the contract has been executed, then we have a triggering event that will automatically transfer the money, for example. So if I negotiate with Procter & Gamble and say, hey, Procter & Gamble, we've decided that net 60 is an agreeable term, then as soon as I deliver the goods, plus 60 days, as soon as that 60th day comes, the amount of money is automatically transferred from Procter & Gamble to me. There's no like, hey, and ha, and did you have the money? And no, I don't have the money, and what? And no, we're going to pay you 120. Because the smart contract takes all of that post-contract negotiating out of the works. Here's what it means. We have, again, different types of participants in our contract. So the very first step, we come up with our agreement. We decide this is what's going to be the terms of the contract. So this involves our participants. Once we have agreed on them, then we are going to bring in an oracle who is going to take that data and they're going to figure out what are the specific data values. So we take the data from the contract and convert it to code. Now I say oracle is a participant. It's usually not a physical human being. Usually this is a robot, right? A script that's going to take that data and it's going to search for the fields that you have in your contract and automatically generate this contract. Okay, so we take the data, pull that out, the oracle converts it to code. Then we take that contract and we add it to the blockchain as a new block. Once it is on the blockchain and it has been validated by our peers, so our peers are going to look at this and they're going to validate it. Once it has been validated, then that contract is immutable, meaning it cannot be changed, altered. Does that mean that we can't ever change a contract once it's been recorded to a blockchain? No. It means if we do change it, okay, if we have an amendment, that is going to be added as a new block on the blockchain. So you can see the original agreement, and then you can see the one that replaces it. But the goal here is that we're not completely, we can't change the original terms in the ledger itself, like we can't change the data, but we could negotiate and alter it and add it later on. Just like if there were fraud in a blockchain, that fraud is never going away, but we can see the subsequent transaction that corrects that fraud or that erroneous transaction. So it creates an audit trail to show exactly what's taken place in this negotiation contract. All right, once the peers have validated that, it's on the chain, then we have the triggering event. 60 days later, we execute the contract, and then it's complete. This is all automatic. So if we have a hedge contract, for example, where we're going to buy currency in the future, to reduce the risk of foreign currency fluctuation. Same thing. We have the event in place. As soon as that trigger takes place, whatever the date is of that negotiated amount, it automatically is transacted between the computers. We don't even interact with it. Okay? It's kind of like buying a subscription to a new streaming service. Once you put the credit card information, you just forget about it, and it continuously bills you until the end of time or until you cancel it. Right? Can you see how something like a smart contract would take away, eliminate some of the error and fraud and squishiness of traditional contracts? Hold companies a little bit more accountable to the terms that they negotiated and agreed on. And again, this is made possible because all this data is on a blockchain, and so you can't change it, you can't stop it after the fact unless you alter the agreement and add a new block.